In this video, I'm just going to run through how I've used Inkscape to create this abstract portrait. If that interests you, stick with us. So to get started, I'm just going to remove the page. I don't need the page, I'm not going to be using it. So I'm just going to drag it off to one side since we've got an infinite canvas. Now I'm going to come up to File, down to Import, and in here I've just got an image that I've downloaded from Pixabay. I'm going to double click on this, OK to the settings, and it imports my image. I'm going to hold Control and I'm just going to shrink this image down a little bit. We're holding down Control to constrain the proportions so it doesn't get misshapen. I'm also going to click on it to get the rotation handles, and I'm just going to rotate it till the face is at the angle that I like. I think somewhere around about there. Just going to move it over a touch. The next thing I want to do is mask out some of this hair. Because we've got a solid black background, I'm just going to use a solid black shape to cover over this hair and get rid of it. So I'm just going to come over to my Bezier pen tool, and up the top I'm going to make sure it's on regular Bezier mode, and then I can just come over and start clicking and dragging to make my shapes. If you click and drag, you get a smooth curve. If you just click and release, you get a sharp corner. So around here, I'm going to click and drag so that I get smooth curves. Once I'm outside, it makes no difference, so I can just come straight up and complete our shape. So I've already got mine coloured in black. If you want to colour yours black, click on the black colour swatch. Incidentally, if you want to colour your stroke, at the moment ours is unset, but if you want to colour the stroke, just hold down Shift and then you can click on to colour the stroke. So if we look up at our image, our shape is a little bit harsh around the forehead. So I'm going to soften that using blur. So to get to blur, I'm going to click back on my selection tool. To get to blur, we're going to come up and open up the fill and stroke dialog box, which is this paintbrush button at the top here. And down the right hand side, we get our fill and stroke dialog box. So to add blur, if we come down to the bottom, we've got a blur slider here, so we can just slide this until it softens up our shape. Now at the top here, we can see a little bit of hair emerging from, oh, press Control Z to put that back. A little bit of hair emerging from our shape where we've blurred the edge. So all I'm going to do there is if we come over to our nodes tool, we can just extend the shape out further, make sure we're covering that edge. Incidentally, if you're not familiar with using the Bezier pen tool and the nodes tool, if you click on the link in the top right hand corner, it'll show you everything you need to know. So I think I'm happy with that. That's looking pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is just add a big black background. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle over the top of the whole lot. We can always adjust this later on. I'm going to come back to my selection tool and I'm just going to drop, with the rectangle selected, I'm just going to drop it to the back. So clicking on this button at the end here, and that drops it down below our image. So we're looking pretty good. We've got a bit of a harsh edge on the bottom, but we'll deal with that later on. When I make my hair, I'm going to make it out of coloured sections and it's likely to overlap the front of the face. So we've got a mask, so we can just mask out the bits that we don't want. I want to create a shape that follows the curve or the contour of the face, so we can just cover up any overlap. So the way I'm going to do this is to come down and use the paint bucket tool. So we click on the paint bucket tool. In here you get a selection of options at the top. You can choose from what it looks at to fill the area. We're going to use visible colour. We're going to leave threshold at 5. Grow and shrink we're not going to use, and we don't need to do anything with close gaps. If you want to learn more about the paint bucket tool, I've got a video for that as well. Click on the link in the top right hand corner and you can watch that one. So to fill it, all we need to do is click on the area that we want to fill. Now we can't actually see anything because our paint bucket tool is currently black. If we change it to red so we can see what we've done, you can see it's done a fairly good job coming around and following the contour of the face. I'm not worried about the back because we're going to be chopping all that out and adding some space for hair behind here because we just want the mask to mask the front of the face if there's any overlap on the face. So I'm going to change back to my selection tool and I'm just going to hold down Control and scroll in or zoom in with the scroll wheel. So we've got a few little areas here that we could just adjust. I'm not going to be too precise. I'm happy with most of it. There's a little bit in the mouth that I'm going to adjust, and up by the eyebrows where there's some hairs, it's caused this black area here. So all I'm going to do is come over, get the nodes tool. Now we can see all the nodes. So I'm just going to drag a box over all the nodes I want to get rid of and press delete. And then we can just adjust this line till it sits nicely on the edge of the face. I'll be over here. And I think if we get rid of these two nodes in here, so we drag a box over, press delete, and we can just adjust these a little bit just to tidy up the mouth. So if we want to change the type of nodes, we can either change them at the top here. So we've got cusp nodes for corner nodes. We've got smooth nodes. We've got symmetrical nodes, which are smooth nodes with equal length handles. And we've got automatic nodes at the end here, automatically smooth nodes. So we can either do it up here by selecting which one we want. So say I wanted to turn this one from a smooth node into a corner node or a cusp node. We could click on this button here. And then we can adjust the handles individually. Or another way of doing it is if we select a node, we can hold down Control and we can just click on the node, and that will cycle through all the different node types. So with that done, actually I'm just going to drag over these ones and just move them over a touch while we're zoomed in. Makes everything a little bit more visible. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to hold down Control and just zoom back out. So I'll go back to the selection tool for a minute so we can see what we've got. So our face is looking pretty good, but now we need to make a bit of space for our hair. So I'm going to cut a hole out the back here. So what I'm going to do is create a shape that's the shape of the hole, and then we'll subtract that using Boolean operators from our mask shape that we've got here at the moment. So if we come over, we can go to our Bezier pen tool, and then I'm just going to click and create a shape. Doesn't have to be too precise. Like I say, this is more for just making sure that we can cut out any mess that overlaps the face. So I'm just going to change the color of it so we can actually see what we've just made. There's a little bit up here that needs adjusting, so I'm going to get the nodes tool. I'm just going to drag that over a touch, and then we can subtract this one away from our background shape. So I'm going to get my selection tool. We've currently got this one selected, so I'm going to hold down Shift, select the red mask shape, and then we can come up to Path and down to Difference, and this would take away the top shape from the bottom shape, leaving a hole where we can put our hair. So now we've created our mask, I think I'm going to open up the Layers and Objects dialog box. We can click on this button at the top, and in here we can see everything we've done in our project so far. So the rectangle is our black background. We've then got the image, then we've got the path that we use to smooth it out. So these three, so I'm going to click on the top one, hold down Shift, and I'm going to select the rectangle at the bottom, and select all three of those elements. I'm then going to come up to Group and group them together. And we can double click in here and change the name. We just call that face. And click off. This top one, this is the path that we're using for our mask. So we can click on this, double click, and we can just change that to mask. Just makes it easier when you're looking at the elements of your project so you know what's what. I'm quite happy with the position of these. I don't want to accidentally move them, so I'm going to lock them both for the time being. We come down, we click on the padlock icons and lock them both. It just means that I can't actually grab anything now and move it by mistake. So we've got our mask, we've got the face with a black background. Next thing we need to do is create some hair. So again, I'm going to be using the Bezier pen tool, and at the top, this time I'm going to use a different mode. The next one along is Spiro path. So this creates nice smooth curves. It can be a little bit erratic when you're not used to using it, but if you do small increments, you can control it quite well. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z, get rid of the nodes that I don't want, and I'm going to start up here and just work my way along. So whenever you want to create a sharp corner, if you hold down Shift and click, you're back to a sharp corner. So then you can just click and carry on. And we just carry on like this until we've created our hair. And then I'm just going to go around the outside until we complete our shape. I'm quite happy with that. When I'm doing this, obviously it takes a little bit of time to draw these shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat and just use the same shape and just drag it around and manipulate it a little bit so it looks a little bit different. If we come over to our fill and stroke dialog box, I'm just going to reduce the opacity slightly so we can see our face underneath. I'm going to come up to my selection tool. I'm going to select the shape, or make sure it's selected. I'm then going to press Control D to duplicate it. And then we can just move this off and we can just play with this so it looks a little bit different. Press Control D again and duplicate it once more. And like I say, if we just make these quite subtle tweaks to our shape, we can, I'm going to rotate that slightly. Yeah, so if we make subtle changes to our shapes, we can just give it the flames a slightly different appearance, and it saves us creating more and more shapes, take an extra time. So I'm going to press, with it selected, I want to press Control D one more time, create one more shape. We give this a different color so we can see it again. I'm going to drag that down, and I'm going to have this going across the face a bit so we get a bit of color variation on the face. I think that'll do me for those. So I'm going to make all these fully opaque. So if we come to our layers and objects dialog box, we can see above the mask, we've got our 4 paths that we've created. So with path 7 selected, I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to select path 3, which will select all the paths in between. We can then go back to our fill and stroke dialog box and we can just take the opacity back up to 100%. So they're all 100% opacity. So now I just want to change the colors a little bit. So we've got 2 here that I've left the same color. We'll click off first just to deselect them, and then we go through them one by one and we can adjust the colors. Let's just change this so we can see what we've got. So we can adjust the colors, and if we look at the top, we've got other options that we can use. So at the moment we've just got solid color or flat color. We could use linear gradients, which is just a straight gradient. We could use radial gradients, which is what we're going to be using, which makes circular and elliptical gradients. We've also got other options such as gradient meshes and patterns. So I'm going to select, which one are we on? So we'll start with the front one. I'm going to give it a radial gradient, and we can see our gradient here. So this is our gradient bar. We've got 2 stops on our gradient bar. One of them's always transparent when you create a gradient, and that's this bottom stop here. So we can either select the stops on the line here, so we could select this one, or we can select them here. Or another way that's really handy is if we come over to the left hand side, we can select our gradient tool and just hold down my scroll wheel and move us across. And this shows us our actual gradient controls on canvas. Then we can move these about to wherever we want and adjust them that way. So at the moment, I've got the center stop selected. We can see it's this fully opaque orange over here. I'm going to just make that a little bit more red so we can do it on our color wheel. I'm going to click on the transparent stop. So if we look at the alpha channel, it's right down to 0. All we're going to do is drag that up, make it fully opaque, and we can just tweak the color of that a little bit. I think I'll make it slightly more yellow. So I'm just going to continue on and adjust the colors of all of our layers. I'm quite happy with those colors, I think. If we go back to our layers and objects dialog box, I'm going to select path 7, the top one, and I'll hold down shift. I'm going to select path 3, the bottom one. We've got all of our hair paths selected, and I'm going to come up to group them all together, and then we can rename that. So we'll double click on it, call it hair. So I want to drop this down behind the mask so we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to get a hold of the hair, and on here I'm just going to drag it down till it's under the mask. So now it's sat in the right location. What I'm going to do is change the blend mode. So if we come up to our hair, we've got this box at the front. We've got our eyeball, which toggles the visibility on and off. And we've got our lock, which we've used before. If we click on the square at the front, this opens up a new dialog box. So in here, we can change the opacity and we can change the blend mode. Now, the blend mode is how it interacts with the layers behind or the images behind. So we can cycle through these and just see what we like. Oh, so that's getting more interesting. That's also quite good. I think I quite like that one. So I'm going to add a bit of variation to this. I'll tell you what we can do first. So if we got our selection tool, we just select our mask. Our mask is just confusing the issue at the moment because it's bright red. Actually, our mask is locked. We'll unlock our mask so we can actually work on it. Let's get the selection tool. We'll select the mask, and I'm just going to change it to black. So I'm going to come down to the bottom here and left click on the black, give it a black color. We can lock it again so we don't move it. So the image is starting to look quite striking, but there are a few things we can do just to give it a little bit more interest. Actually, now we've got this on here, we can see part of the hair is showing through. So we can go back and we can adjust that. So what do we have it in? Face, wasn't it? If we open up face, we've got the image and then we've got the path on top. If we select the path on top, so this is the shape that we stuck on top to mask out the hair. If we go back to our nodes tool, we can see the outline. With the nodes tool, as you move over different shapes, so their outlines appear. So you can select individual shapes. If you don't have a red outline like this, if you come up to the top, we've got this button up here that allows us to make the path visible or not. The one next to it just makes handles visible. So with it on, if we select a node, we can see the handles of that node and the neighboring nodes. If we turn it off, the handles disappear. So we just want to drag over the nodes and adjust our shape until we've covered up that hair. So to about there, and it seems to have vanished. So I'm happy with that. So we can come back out of there. We go back to layer 1. By coming back to layer 1, we just make sure that we're not in one of these groups. Otherwise, if we start doing things, we might find us creating shapes and things within a group, and it'll be added to the group rather than added to the top of the stack. So what I wanted to do is add a filter. So we're going to be adding the filter to the hair group. If we click on hair, and we can come over and come up to filters at the top, and we want the filters gallery. Now, this is quite a nice way of seeing what the different filters are likely to do to your image. So as you look down, you can see all the different filters. So you can either select groups of filters down the left-hand side here. Currently, it's on all filters. Now, I know my filter, or the filter that I want to use, is called lapping. If we come up to the search box at the top, I can just start typing in lap, and we can see lappings come up. So this is the one I'm going to click on, double click to apply it, and it gives it this slightly more random look. So with filters, we can come over to our fill and straight dialog box, and the blur control allows us to adjust the intensity of these filters. I'm going to leave it about there. So I like how this is starting to look. I want a little bit more variation on this though. So I'm going to add another filter. Now I want to add this filter kind of separately to our stack. So if we come up to our layers and objects dialog box, we've currently got our hair with a filter applied. So another way we can add filters or blur for the same object is to group it on its own. So with my hair selected, I'm going to come up to group it on its own, and we can just call this hair group. So click off. So I'm going to apply another filter to the hair group. So we're going to make sure we've got it selected, and we can come up to our filter gallery and get rid of lap. And the next one I want to try and add is swirl. So this one here, I want to double click on this, and this one has quite an intense effect. Now this is too much for me. So we can come back to our fill and straight dialog box, and we can try adjusting the blur to see what we can get, but it's still too much. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z just to put the setting back to what it was originally. Another way we can adjust our filters is if we come up to filters, we can come down and click on filter editor, and this displays all of the components that go into making up this filter. So we can go through these and we can adjust each individual section independently. So I'm just going to move back and forth adjusting these. So we can just go backwards and forwards, tweaking the filters, both the lapping filter and the swirl filter, until we get an image that we're happy with. I'm just going to click on the hair group, and I'm going to come over to the opacity and blend modes option, and we can just see how this looks. So I'm just going to continue on adjusting things until I get an image that I'm happy with. I think I might go back, if we go to the layers and objects dialog box, I think I might go back to the hair group, open it up, open up the hair inside, and I might just create another group in here so we can add a bit of blur before we apply the filters. So all I'm going to do is select path 7, hold down shift, select path 3 so it selects all of them, and I'm just going to come up, group those, and then group 1 we can now add blur to. So I'll just come up to my fill and stroke and add a little blur to it. And then I'm just going to go back and I'm going to play with the filters until I get something that I like. So I think I'm happy with that now. We've got harsh lines down the bottom here, so what I'm going to do is just create another black shape just to mask some of this out. So come up, get the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to drag out an ellipse. I'm going to turn it red just so we can see it. Change to my selection tool, and then we can rotate this, put it where we want it. So I add a bit of blur to that. And turn it black. So now I'm happy with the image. What I want to do is just trim this to the right size so we can just get rid of the excess around the outside. So first thing I'm going to do is select everything. I want to group them all together, so we just need to make sure that anything that's locked is unlocked. Then we can come up to this button up here and click on this, and it selects everything within our layer. So with everything selected, we can come up, group it all together, and then I'm going to come up, grab my rectangle tool. We can drag out a rectangle. Can't actually see what we're doing. So if we come into the fill and stroke dialog box, we can reduce the opacity, and I'll change the color as well so we can see it nice and clearly. And then we just want to move this about until it frames our picture nicely. So I think I'm happy with that. So holding down Shift, I'm going to select our group behind, and we can come up to Object and down to Clip, Set Clip. Press 4 on the keyboard, it will zoom us into our image. So I think I'm happy with that. I say in my trial run for this video, I came up with a slightly different image. I don't know which one you prefer. You'll have to let me know in the comments. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.